Projection.
It's Friday morning, and you know what that means. It's time for another episode of the Alabama Slam podcast. I'm your host, Corey Hanna.
What's going on, guys? It's Patrick Akers.
Man, I say let's jump right into it. We got a couple things we're going to touch on, the Vince McMahon stuff and Death Before Dishonor pay-per-view before we get into last night's Dynamite, which was all around a pretty good show, I thought. But let's start off with the big news. Last week we released on Friday morning, and then just a few hours after that, the big news broke about Vince McMahon retiring, which we could all probably see coming from a mile away. I just honestly didn't think it would happen that quickly. What do you think about the whole situation?
Honestly, you said you saw it come from a mile away. It was kind of surprising to me. You know, this is something that I think we've mentioned briefly on the pod. I don't think we've delved too deep into it. But, you know, obviously if you're a wrestling fan, you know all the Vince McMahon, the scandals and everything that's happened. But I thought he was just I thought the dude was Teflon. I thought he would just ride through this and not have anything happen. And then, it comes out Friday afternoon, right after the stocks close, which would make you believe that this was something that's been planned for at least a couple of days, if not some weeks at this point. You and I are both in the news business. I would say that they probably got wind that something else was coming down the pike.
Yeah, because more allegations came out like within a few hours after his retirement.
Right, and so now he's being investigated by the SEC, that maybe some of these hush payments should have been put on some records. So who knows, you know, did the Wall Street Journal find anything else? Did the, HBO Real Sports is looking into him? Did they find anything else? Did another news outlet look and find anything else? Because obviously they're going to call up the WWE and ask them for comment. So it's not like any of this stuff is going to be surprising to them, you know. So, it's curious, obviously, on the personal side, just from the WWE side and the wrestling side of it. This man has been the head creative force of that company for almost 40 years now. So this is, I think, outside of the Chris Benoit tragedy, obviously just because of the real-life implications that happened with that and how horrid all those details were. This is the biggest wrestling story of all time, the wrestling news. Like, Vince McMahon is, if you want to talk about somebody who has bent an industry to his will and made it into the image that he wanted. It's Vince McMahon. I mean, he's on the level, really, in terms of American entertainment. P.T. Barnum, Walt Disney. He's up there. He's one of those figures, and to now have him gone from the company, it's going to be interesting to see how it changes, if it changes, and what all happens with that.
I mean, you know, there's a good chance we could see some changes as soon as this weekend. I've seen a couple of headlines about how a lot of people believe there could be a shakeup in creative since Triple H was put in charge of that we could see a change in the creative as soon as SummerSlam. And just before I came in here to record, Seth Rollins had tweeted out yesterday morning or something about how he's really upset that, you know, he's not going to get a chance at SummerSlam, this, that, and the other. And Triple H retweeted it and just said, "I hear you."
Yeah.
So when, you know, Seth Rollins' match versus Matt Riddle was delayed until another month or two down the road because of an injury, even though they're saying now that that's not necessarily the case. I saw that yesterday. I don't know what's happening there, but I've got a feeling we'll see Seth Rollins in some capacity at SummerSlam this weekend.
Yeah, and you know, there were reports that before the Raw, right after Vince's retirement, Triple H held a backstage meeting with all the talent and kind of went over all that. You know, he's going to take over creative now, which, hey, I never really cared for Triple H, the wrestler. He was fine. But Paul Levesque, the wrestling mind, has a pretty good track record. I mean, there's an argument to be made that the NXT product that he was over was some of the best stuff that WWE has done in years. I mean, that's where you got Finn Balor. That's where you got Samoa Joe, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, all those guys came through the NXT under Triple H's direction, and the things that he was able to do with limited resources, it really was a breath of fresh air and a kind of an oasis for fans like us that didn't have AEW at the time and that kind of stuff. So to see what he's going to do with the maximum resources of Raw and SmackDown at his disposal, well, I told you before we started rolling, the first thought that I had when I saw the headline that said Triple H assumes head of creative, I was like, these motherfuckers going to pull me back in. Well, they're going to make me start watching this thing again. Because I've always just wanted WWE has never had a talent problem. The in-ring talent and the roster that they have is kind of impeccable, right? I mean, you're talking about guys like Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn, Finn Balor, Shinsuke Nakamura. I mean, these are heavy hitters up and down the roster. AJ Styles. The problem with them has always been there's been a damn near 80-year-old man who has been calling all the shots, who's completely out of touch with where culture is at and how people consume content and what they're looking for out of a wrestling product. And so now with him gone, I mean, this is a perfect opportunity for them to really usher in a new era. We'll see how much changes happen.
Yeah, I may actually watch SummerSlam this weekend. I only watched a couple matches from WrestleMania. But I tuned in to SmackDown for just a few minutes Friday for the first time in forever. I watched Stephanie's intro and the first match or two, and I was like, okay, I'm out for the night. I couldn't stay focused on it, but I'll give SummerSlam a shot and see what happens. I mean, they're not going to come in and it's going to be an amazing product for me right off the bat. And some of the people that are wrestling in WWE now, I don't have the slightest idea who they are since I've been out of loop with that for a little while. And but yeah, I mean, I may start giving it a shot here and there. I don't know that I can commit my Wednesday night, my Friday night, that I'd already commit to AEW Rampage, and then also on a Monday night. But I may peek in here and there again and see. I mean, that was basically the only thing on when I started watching wrestling a few years ago. So I'm still connected, obviously, to a few of those wrestlers. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Will it be enough to bring me back in full time? Who's to say? Who knows? We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would probably expect to not change too much, and you and I have talked about this, the actual bell-to-bell action, I don't think is going to change that much because I don't think it can. I brought up to you last week, those guys in WWE, they can't wrestle like Darby Allin because you can't wrestle like Darby Allin 4 times a week and fucking survive. Like you will literally die if you do that because you have to think these guys, they do Raw, then they go home, and then it's the weekend is jam-packed full. They got SmackDown. They have house shows on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Like you can't just go that hard nonstop without your body just breaking down. So I would expect for that to not change too much, but in terms of the story and the spectacle, when WWE is firing on all cylinders, nobody can touch it, really.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It won't. Do they consider at some point in the future maybe not doing the house shows? Like,
no, it draws in too much money, and they're a. As much as they are a television product, they are a traveling circus, too.
Gotcha.
And so, and those house shows, too, that's how you build fans. When you bring these, or how you build new wrestling fans, when you bring these kids into the arenas, like this might be the first time they've ever seen a ring in person, and those house shows are much more intimate because you don't have to worry about things like commercial breaks and camera angles and stuff like that. So, like, sure. It is a special thing going to a house show. So, no, I don't think they would stop that touring schedule anytime soon. But, those guys can, on the pay-per-views or whatever the hell they're called, no premium live events, whatever the hell they're called, those guys could probably still go full tilt for some of those every single time. One of the things I did want to mention, Vince McMahon's impact on professional wrestling is profound, but one of the things that I saw circling around the internet this weekend was like a lot of people saying none of us would be fans if it wasn't for Vince, which is just that's patently not true. Like, one of the things that I hope that we do with this podcast here is that we expose listeners to professional wrestling history, to other wrestling outside of AEW and WWE and other kind of styles and stuff like that. Like, Vince McMahon had nothing to do with Harley Race's success, right, in the 70s. There was the NWA, where guys like Flair and Dusty Rhodes and Terry Funk and the Briscoes and the Freebirds and the Von Erichs, all those guys were successful outside of WWE, and they were doing shows, granted, not to the level of what WWE is doing now, but compared to the 70s and 80s, there were fans, particularly here in the Southeast, it was all NWA country. Yeah. It wasn't... Vince McMahon's dad was running in the Northeast, and so like you had all these different territories. Jerry Lawler. Yeah. Jerry Lawler cut his teeth completely outside of anything that was in the WWE. And I mean, talk about one of the most influential wrestling minds of all time. Jerry Lawler's up there. There's dudes today that are still stealing stuff that what Lawler was doing in the 70s in Memphis. So like, and I get it because a lot of people just haven't been exposed to that kind of stuff. When they think wrestling, they think WWE. And, you know, if you grew up on Hogan and Macho Man and that kind of stuff, I could see why that would happen. I mean, me personally, I was a WCW guy, so, like, it was Sting, and I knew Hogan outside of WWE, so I don't know. Just that kind of sentiment. You know, there is, while Vince McMahon might be the most impactful wrestling promoter, booker, whatever you want to say it of all time, like he certainly wasn't the only one. And so there were guys, you know, you can go on Peacock and watch World Class Championship Wrestling, and you could see the stuff that they were doing there, with putting the camera right up to the ring, like stuff like that influenced the television product. So just to just take a step back, you know, we overhype things like this sometimes. You know, saying that there would be no wrestling without Vince McMahon is kind of a crazy thought to have. It's not like he built this thing up from nothing. Like, this was his dad's company. Everybody remember, like, Capital Wrestling, the WWF, was doing $1 million gates in Madison Square Garden before Vince McMahon ever bought the company from his dad. So, yeah, just a more appreciation of the entirety of professional wrestling and how we got to where it is today. Now, obviously, you can't tell that story without Vince McMahon. He plays, you know, the biggest part in that of anybody, but it existed before McMahon. It'll exist after McMahon.
Well, let's touch on Death Before Dishonor briefly before we get into Dynamite for the week. I didn't pull the trigger on that. I felt like complete shit on Saturday. I finally caught the COVID on late Thursday. I went home, tested positive. Saturday was the worst of it for me, so I was just kind of in a trance Saturday.
Hey, you in that comeback now, baby.
Yeah, baby.
You done got the fans done rallied. You done hit the sunset flip.
That's
1, 2, 3. We on the other side of it.
Let's get a clap going.
Starting to clap.
Get a slow clap. But yeah, man. So I just didn't pull the trigger on it. There were only 2 or 3 matches I really wanted to see anyway. The main one was the tag match with FTR and the Briscoes, and then the Claudio match for the championship. And you know, there was a lot of hype. They kept talking about Claudio had never won a championship, this, that, and the other. So I think we all kind of saw that coming. But one of the major implications that came from that was that Jonathan Gresham apparently had a blow up before the event, and then had a talk with Tony, and then kind of walked away. So will he be back? I mean, it doesn't really sound like it at this point. It sounds like he gone. You
know, he had, from everything I've read, he had the same kind of complaints that guys like Joey Janela have had, guys like Marco Stunt have had, where it's like basically there's little to no communication, and they felt ghosted. Apparently Gresham, from his account, has been trying to get a meeting with Tony to discuss creative. It didn't happen, and so it led to a big blow-up at Death Before Dishonor. And, yeah, he's deleted his Twitter. You know, he had that independent promotion out of Atlanta called Terminus. Looks like that might not happen anymore. And, you know, you and I have talked about on this podcast ad nauseum at this point, Tony might need some help. He might need a staff of writers, a kind of booking committee that can kind of handle this stuff. You know, I think Sean Ross Sapp reported that the way it usually goes in AEW is that if you have a problem, you talk to one of the coaches then run it up the ladder to Tony. Obviously, that's not the case for guys like Danielson, Punk, Moxley. I mean, they're going straight to Tony. But for the other guys, like, that's kind of the standard of operating procedure there. So, I feel for Gresham because in terms of his in-ring work, it is up there. Like, he is a highly technical, highly effective professional wrestler. The problem is he's 5'4".
Yeah.
And, like, we can't... That's something that can't just be glossed over, particularly when ROH is trying to get a television deal. And so if I'm coming to you and you're a television executive and I say I have a wrestling product where my main guy is, 5'4", he looks like this and no one's ever heard of him, or our main guy is a 6'4" Swiss Superman who has spent the last decade being a prominent part of the biggest wrestling promotion in the world, okay, well, those are, the obvious choice is obvious for a reason, right? So, Gresham could have been like a Dean Malenko, where Malenko never got a shot at a world title, but Malenko still has a career in wrestling because he's a great mind. He's a hell of a trainer. And so Gresham probably could have took that route if he wanted to, because like we talked about, the in-ring skills that he has, they're up there. And so being able to have a life of having a career outside your in-ring career where you can be a trainer or be a coach or something like that was probably always a possibility. But, hey, he feels a certain type of way and he feels slighted. And so, at some points you have to walk away. So I hope this isn't the last we see of Gresham, though. Just in ring. It's probably the last we see of Gresham in AEW or Ring of Honor, but in terms of wrestling, I think he still has something to offer.
Yeah, maybe he'll be back. It was kind of a shame the way that played out, but I think it was pretty obvious they were putting the belt on Claudio, and if he was mad about that, then that, I don't get it. But I get that he's mad that he didn't get to have any communication about.
And that's probably the bigger issue. But at some point, like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were the Ring of Honor world champion, but you were the world champion at a time when the company literally went out of business.
Yeah.
Is anybody buying tickets to see Jonathan Gresham? I would say probably not. I mean, there might be one or two people out there. Claudio is the right choice, but yeah, you hate that it came to what it came to.
Yeah. So probably the biggest and most talked about match was FTR versus the Briscoes, and by all accounts, that was a banger, like the last one that they put on. Did you get to see any of that?
I didn't. I saw some clips. I'm wanting to when the price of the pay-per-view comes down, I'm going to buy both Briscoe FTR matches and watch them kind of back to back. The Briscoes, when this Ring of Honor deal goes through and they get television and they put the library up there, I would just encourage everybody, if you've never familiarized yourself with the Briscoes, like, go watch some of their matches, man. There was a time there from 05, 06, 07, 08, where they were literally the best tag team in the world having matches. The reason they did these 2 out of 3 falls is because that's a callback to the Briscoes. When the Briscoes were at the top of their game, they would have 2 out of 3 falls with tag team matches, and they'd win both falls, and they'd sweep people. And that was their little gimmick that they had going on. So, obviously we'll probably never get the Briscoes in AEW because of and you can look this up at home. The Warner Media guys, apparently it came out they didn't want the Briscoes on their television based off some tweets they sent out back in the day. So, but it looks like they are going to be a part of Ring of Honor. I think it was reported they have signed contracts.
Yeah, I saw that too.
So, I'm not mad about getting more FTR Briscoe matches in the future. But yeah, apparently this was a banger. You would expect nothing less from those 4 gentlemen. I guess the big thing coming out the end of it was, if folks out there didn't see, when FTR was celebrating, Claudio, Regal, and Wheeler Yuta were standing at the ramp. They had a little stare down. So I don't really know booking-wise why you would do that. two babyface tag teams, as over as they are, somebody has to lose. But hey,
but why introduce Claudio and Wheeler as a tag team, and then all of a sudden they've got a thing with FTR. FTR has clearly got their mind on the one thing, and it's the championship.
Well, I mean, you would think, but I mean, we've yet to have FTR come out to challenge anything for the AEW tag titles.
Yeah, I mean that's got to be coming surely at All Out.
At this point, I mean, you would say that's the match to make, right? It's FTR and the Young Bucks for all the marbles. Because FTR having these other belts really doesn't do anything unless they have the main belt, AEW, right?
You mean FTR and Keith and Swerve.
Well, I mean, Keith and Swerve, yeah, but I mean, that's not... In a perfect booking world, you would have never put the belts on Keith and Swerve to begin with. It should have been the Bucks.
Yeah.
And it should have been FTR versus the Bucks for all everything, for all the belts. Because them having the AAA belts or the IWGP belts or the Ring of Honor belts really doesn't mean anything without them having the AEW World Tag Team Championship. I mean, that's the one that gets the high-profile place on AEW television.
Right.
And so it's the totality of them having all the belts that matters, not the fact that they just are Ultimo Dragoning, their personal, all the other belts they have right now. So,
well, let's get on into Dynamite. It started out with a banger of a match, but it was mostly irrelevant, honestly. Moxley versus Roosh, which is weird to put a dude that's wrestled once in AEW up for the title.
So much for those rankings.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get that. I get that they want to try to push some guys at this time, but that seemed weird. But having said that, I mean, it was a fucking banger. They, that one went hard. They got after each other and beat the shit out of each other. We were talking earlier off mic. It was kind of 50-50.
Yeah, which would make me believe that they must have some big plans for this Roosh guy. And Roosh obviously has aligned himself with Andrade. So, I mean, you don't let your world champion give a guy that much offense unless you have some big plans for him in the future. Or at least you shouldn't, I guess I should say. Who knows what they're going to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, Roosh, like you said, man, aggressive, stiff, physical, has a charisma about him, looks the part.
I mean, he's got a good ring presence for sure.
Yeah. I'm digging the mask when he comes down the entranceway. It's funny because I saw he wrestled Penta a couple weeks ago. I didn't think that much about the Penta match, and I was like, oh, well, this Roosh guy, he's fine. But he took it up a notch Wednesday night for sure.
Yeah, it was a solid way to start the show. We had some fairly negative thoughts about the show last week. They had put on really, really solid shows the previous weeks before that. So, I guess it was kind of natural to have a bit of a down week. I thought overall it was a pretty good show last night, and that was a real solid way to start it off. Now, having said that, as soon as the match was over, Jericho comes out, and all of a sudden he and Moxley are in a thing again for whatever reason.
Are we too hard on Jericho?
No, the thing is, this is another thing we were talking about off mic earlier, was Jericho's at his best when he's putting young talent over, like he did last year with Orange Cassidy. So here's my thing: is why do we have Jericho out there beating Eddie Kingston in the middle of a fantastic Eddie Kingston run, and then why is Jericho getting a shot at the title right now? He hasn't done any real singles wrestling in a while that I remember, right?
No, he's been involved in this faction versus faction thing that they've had going on.
Yeah. So why are we putting him in a match against Moxley? It just I don't know. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I mean, it might be a good match, but it's just kind of irrelevant and pointless and doesn't really do anything leading up to All Out.
Yeah. So first off, because I'll bring up a point here in a second, the Moxley promo that he cut on Jericho is the exact same promo that Eddie Kingston cut on him back in February. And the only reason I know that is because recently on the recommended YouTube thing, it was the Kingston Jericho promo where Jericho had the security lining up. And Kingston was like, give me the Jericho that bled buckets in Tennessee. Give me the Jericho that your friend Levesque hated. Like, that's exactly what Moxley said to Jericho last night, except he said, give me the Lionheart. Here's the thing, that Lionheart don't exist no more, because Lionheart Chris Jericho was 27, and Jericho right now is 51. And there's just a difference. You can't go at the same level damn near 20 years later. It's just, guys lose a step. It is what it is. But I have a question for you, which is, if we knew that we were going to do, obviously this wasn't the plan, right, to have Moxley as the champion, because the Punk injury happened and it derailed everything. So they gave the belt to Moxley. Makes total sense. But if, booking-wise, we know that eventually down the road we're going to do Moxley and Punk, meaning we know and the audience knows we're not taking this belt off Moxley at this point. Why not give this run against Moxley, why not give it to somebody, a young guy who is deserving or somebody maybe a little bit surprising? So I got a couple names for you. I went down the AEW roster last night after this happened. These are guys that I think potentially could have had an angle with Moxley in the lead up to this absence that we had with Punk. Ethan Page would have had a hell of a... He would have been able to match him promo for promo on the mic. Ethan Page apparently is somebody that we've heard AEW is high on, but yet has done absolutely nothing. Why not throw Ethan Page in there against Moxley for a little mini angle? Lee Moriarty. You want to talk about elevating somebody up into putting them in the position? Lee Moriarty would have been a guy. How about Powerhouse Hobbs? Now, obviously, we'll talk about what happened last night, but, if we're going back 3 weeks, could we have had a Powerhouse Hobbs versus John Moxley thing? Ricky Starks, same thing. We could have done Starks against Moxley.
Yeah, that would have been good.
How about Sting? Does Sting have another little mini run left in him?
Yeah, I don't know if you can put Sting in the ring with Moxley.
Maybe not. But here's a name that I came across last night.
I think Sting works best how he's used now.
It would have been interesting. It would have been way more interesting than Jericho.
I mean, yeah, for sure.
But here's the name that I came across where I was like, if they would have set this up 3 weeks ago, I think there's a lot of narrative real estate that you could have explored here. Why not have Moxley versus Dustin Rhodes for the title?
Yeah.
So let me give you the pitch. So, in fantasy booking here, now listeners can hit us up on social and let me know that this is stupid and, I'm a dumbass and all that jazz. We come out of Blood and Guts. We're going to end Blackpool Combat Club versus Jericho Appreciation Society at Blood and Guts the way it should have been ended. We will not keep this going. And if you'll remember, on Rampage, we had the Royal Rampage, which is what Brody King won, which is he has the one match with Moxley, and then that's it. So that's a waste. Why not have Dustin Rhodes be a surprise winner and have the story of Dustin versus Moxley being Dustin Rhodes saying, hey, my brother didn't win a title here. He's never been a world champion. I've never been a world champion. We're carrying on our father's legacy. My brother started this company. I'm going to win a championship. I have one more run left in me. I'm going to surprise some people.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking to tell a story, that's the best angle you could have gone.
Because you could have told a story. You could have told something that way, and you could have had Moxley's interim run mean something. You could have had Dustin had one of the best matches against his brother in AEW history back in 2019.
Yeah.
And if you remember, he had a hell of a match against Punk on a random episode of Dynamite.
Yeah, that was a banger.
And so playing up this angle of, hey, I'm a gunslinger. This is my last rodeo. Like, I've got one more left in me.
Yeah, I mean, it's something you couldn't put him on a long run because I don't know that he can go that much. But, I mean, he put on a hell of a show with Punk.
And this is,
you could put the belt on him for a few weeks. Maybe.
Well, we don't
or
even...
not even put the belt on him, but like...
Yeah, he doesn't even have to win.
Dude.
He doesn't have to win the belt against Moxley.
Yeah.
But you can use this time here to actually tell a story, and you could have somebody like Dustin Rhodes, who then now, if you do this Dustin Rhodes versus Moxley thing, there's so many ways you could come about it. It's a babyface thing, but you could have Dustin winning the respect of Moxley and the Blackpool Combat Club, and yeah, I mean, there's so much more you could have just done. You could have told a story, as opposed to using this time to just have random matches. As good as that Moxley versus Roosh match was, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Nobody ever thought Roosh was going to win the title, but you could put that element, that little seed of doubt, into people. Be like, hey, Dustin, are they going to do this? Like, will they? I mean, Dustin and Punk, you could have played that up. Hey, I took the champ to the limit right before he went out of here. Like, I'm in my 50s, but I can still go, man.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It's just, there were better uses of this interim run for Moxley in this title than what we have. We basically just spun our wheels. Obviously, they're going to do this Moxley Jericho in 2 weeks, Quake at the Lake. It'll be a decent match, hopefully, but Jericho's not going to win.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing.
And if Jericho does win, it is one hell of a. Then we've botched this entire thing.
Yeah, surely they're not dumb enough to do that. I mean, they've been real smart about a lot of things. They have botched a few things along the way, but I don't think they'll do that. Surely, there's no reason for that to happen.
I mean, like we mentioned, Punk and Moxley is going to be the feud, and so if we know that, let's play around with it. Because if it sucks, well, that's okay. We have Moxley, and at least we've tried to do something interesting. And I don't think it would have sucked. I think you could have had some really interesting promos between the two of those guys, the Moxley and Dustin Rhodes, and I think you could have got one hell of a match where you could have put Dustin over big time and had just a pro wrestling angle. Like, we're still doing wrestling. It has to have some angles to it. Particularly the World Championship needs something going for it.
Yeah. Well, I think let's move on. And don't spend too much time there. Let's move to the next thing that happened. Was they introduced the triples titles, which they've been kind of teasing for a while, which makes me think that Omega's back. But then they, a couple segments later, we're skipping a little bit, kind of teased that there might be something happening with Hangman and Young Bucks reconciliation. Which I'd kind of like to see, and because I'm sick of the Young Bucks heel angle. But then it immediately became like high school-y.
Yeah, this is the shit that I don't respond to. This is the shit that I've never responded to when WWE did it. These are grown-ass men, right, engaging, at least kayfabe-wise, in a physical combat. And yet they're tied up into this jealousy angle, best friends types. Like, it just doesn't work. Like, you don't see MMA fighters doing this kind of bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, there are better ways to go about doing this. Immediately when I saw it, I was like, oh my God. I mean, has there been a worse fall from grace than what Hangman has had here post-title run?
Yeah, it's kind of a shame how his story has gone since he lost the belt. He's kind of floundering. I mean, maybe they're just kind of waiting to see, do something with him once Omega comes back, and maybe they've got a thing again. Like, I'm not sure what's happening there.
I guess my overall thing is, like, why are we still have to put a TV show on every week? So why are we waiting to do things? And it probably does come down to Tony has these plans, but he's the sole creative force of that company. And when you're tied, or when you're spread so thin amongst, 7 different business ventures, something's going to suffer. And so when you can just do anything, when you can create any kind of story, there is no need to wait. Like, you should be able to pivot quickly and put on a good product and put on a good storyline. So if the only thing that we're doing is just waiting to All Out, then, I mean, just let me know. Like, I'll check out and come back for All Out when we're ready. You know what I mean? Like, and I hope that doesn't sound too negative, but, like, you get what I'm saying. Like, if we can, Hangman has done nothing, and 8 9 months ago, he was the biggest babyface in the company.
Yeah, because I mean, we all kind of think that, like, the Bucks and Omega will be a triples team. So if they do reconcile with Hangman, like, for what purpose other than kind of like getting the Elite back together? I mean, the Elite minus Cody.
Yeah, and I mean, you would have to. Are they gonna? You still have Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Bobby Fish dangling out there.
Yeah, because Adam and O'Reilly are coming back next week, at least in a promo role. That Cole's still not cleared to wrestle, but they did announce that Cole and Riley will be back next week.
So it would seem as if the Undisputed Elite versus the Bucks and Hangman will be the trio's final, probably at All Out, I would guess.
Yeah, maybe. There's a lot of interesting teams like that I think will happen. You know, you got.
It should be House of Black, by the way.
Yeah, I mean
that's the thing to go for.
They're the ones I was about to name first. They got the House of Black trios. You got the Death Triangle, the Luchas and Pac, and then it looks like they're putting. You know, they'll put the Best Friends, which would include Cassidy. You know, they had them in a segment last night.
Yeah.
And I think they've got a match Friday night. There's a bunch of interesting trios or teams that could be out there. So watching that play out should be fun. You know, I just don't know what angle do they use to pick who's going to be the first ones to challenge for the title. And that will happen at All Out, right?
Yeah, from the card last night, they'll announce not announce. They'll have the finals of the tournament at All Out.
Yeah.
You know, we've had Hangman here for months. I mean, we spent all of 2.5 years crowning this guy, going with him on his journey to become champion, and then the second he loses it, just nothing.
Just floundering.
And I didn't know that you could just request a rematch the way Jericho did. Hell, why didn't Hangman do that? Just come back out and say, I want a rematch. Yeah. I didn't know that that's what we did. And
2 years later, Hangman will be like, hey, man. You know what?
But
fuck this. It's my turn.
And I like Hangman a lot. I think there's a lot of potential.
He's one of my
there.
favorites, yeah.
He is, but just I don't need this high school drama BS.
Yeah. Let's get on into one of the more interesting segments and matches from the evening. Ricky Starks versus Danhausen was next for the FTW Championship. You know, he made pretty quick work of Danhausen, and then did the whole thing like he did last week, where he says, "Hey, I still got some in the tank, but I'll actually wrestle this time." And Hook's music popped, and he came out, which was interesting. It was a little bit of an oh shit moment because I didn't really see that coming. I probably should have, because they did the whole thing of mentioning the belt again and this, that, and the other, and then they had the whole graphic about how he was the longest tenured FTW champion. So I should have seen some sort of change coming, but I didn't see Hook coming out. So that was interesting. It was a nice match, real good match. Short as hell. Hook hasn't really had any matches longer than 5 minutes.
I mean, yeah, it's probably short because he's been training for, I don't know, less than a year.
Yeah.
And so you can't really do, you have to basically call everything in the back and have everything pre-planned.
Yeah.
So, he can't go longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah. So he gets the win over Starks. They come back from the break. Starks, has the mic and does another promo and then gets turned on by Hobbs, which was definitely an oh shit moment because there wasn't much of a tease there. You can usually see it kind of brewing in somebody's eyes, but I didn't really see anything happening. And then all of a sudden he just laid him out.
Well, I think I brought it up a couple weeks ago. The Starks babyface turn was coming because heel champions don't hold open challenges. And so when he started that, backing up just a bit, Danhausen is essentially the most over jobber of all time, and that's not an insult. You need those guys. Doink the Clown back in the day, all those, jobbers have their place. And so if you were hoping that Danhausen was going to come into AEW and be some kind of force, I mean, they have showcased this guy as being not able to hang with anybody of quality. But kudos to him for getting himself over the way he has just on his social media. But the most over jobber of all time, that's one hell of a title. Yeah, the Hook stuff. I thought the Hook stuff was just a joke. Was this not a meme that we just started? I didn't know that we were taking this seriously.
I mean, he's really only been on Rampage, I think. I don't know if he's really had any matches on Dynamite. I could be wrong.
But, like, it started as an internet thing, like, oh, send Hook, and then it popped off, and then he had matches. I didn't know that we were going to put him. I guess here's the problem I have with it. First of all, if we're pushing Ricky Starks, let's push Ricky Starks. Guys that get pushes shouldn't lose, and they damn sure shouldn't be getting tapped out in the middle of the ring, first off.
To Hook.
Or to anybody. Like, but Ricky's a main event level player, or at least he has that potential. Hook is so far away from that. Now, I'm not saying that he can't get there. I really like Hook's persona.
Yeah.
But, like, he's going 5 minutes because he can only go 5 minutes.
So do you think it was just a way to get the belt off Starks so that we could put him on a run and then just put this FTW belt basically into irrelevance?
Right. I mean, that's all it is. You have to – you're gearing up to give Ricky a push. And so in order to do that, you have to separate him from this FTW title. I get all that. But, like, again, going back to the theme of last week, we're overcomplicating things for no reason. Why not just have Hobbs win the FTW championship? Like, why not have Ricky win against Danhausen? They go to commercial. They come back. Ricky's standing in there. Tony's interviewing him. Ricky does the same exact promo, except instead of him saying that he's won and lost, he's been losing quite a bit and has gotten used to it, which is something you should never say, by the way. But other than that, what he did right there was a fantastic promo. You can do the exact same promo, and then as he turns and says, I've got a lot more gas in the tank, bring my next challenger out, that's when you have Hobbs' turn. And Ricky, being the babyface that he now is, stands up, even though he's just got his head knocked off his damn shoulders. He's like, well, screw you, I'm still going to fight. You ring the bell, Hobbs hits him with a spine buster, 1, 2, 3, now Hobbs is the FTW champion. And you can bypass all this Hook stuff that we did. And because here's the thing, if you wanted to give Hook just the moment of this is his dad's title, so let's have him stand in the middle of the ring holding the championship with all the fans celebrating, that's fine, I guess. I wouldn't do it that way, but that's how you've chosen to do it, so that's cool. But if in a week, 2 weeks, this thing doesn't end with Hobbs absolutely destroying Hook, and like I'm talking about like beating the shit out of him and taking that title and like breaking the title and Taz running down and Hobbs putting Taz down, then we're doing this push for nothing.
Yeah.
Like, you can only push so many guys at a time. And so what we're focused on right now is Hobbs and Starks. Or we should be. Does that make sense, I guess?
Yeah, for sure.
Like, we're putting a third guy in here for, like, no reason. And we can't... if you're pushing guys, like, they shouldn't be getting beat by... What's Hook going to do with this FTW title? I mean, nothing. Yeah. Like I said, it's not like he can do 20-minute classics just because he's not there yet in his training.
You probably got it right, having Hobbs come out and beat
this is the right... in theory, though, it's the right call. Having Hobbs and Starks break up, because it makes Hobbs, if you want to, I mean, he can play the monster heel because, my God, he looks like a fucking behemoth of a human being.
Yeah. And
so you're going to have no problem getting him over that way. And him turning on Starks, which has had now, he's become the IWC's kind of darling, which he should be. And kudos to Stark for saying, like, it's just bad timing. Like, my time is right goddamn now. Like, yeah, that's the kind of shit that I want to be hearing. Like, that's what a babyface should be saying. And we'll kind of put that up against Jungle Boy's promo here in a second.
Yeah, I don't want to linger on this too much, but he and Cody Rhodes still have a really good relationship, apparently, and Cody tweets about Ricky all the time. I kind of wonder if maybe he won't try to court Ricky over to WWE when it's all said and done.
I mean, yeah, now that Vince is out of the question, those are things that you're going to have to take into consideration, but I don't know if from a creative standpoint you let those things kind of stop you. I think you just try to each week put the best possible product out there that you can. And a big part of that is having guys like Ricky Starks. The whole theme of last night's episode was building these new stars. Granted, this is something they probably should have done 2 months ago, but
Yeah.
hey, better late than never, I guess. But yeah, the hook stuff just it doesn't do it for me.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Jungle Boy got the microphone last night. Came out hot, and then it just kind of petered out. And I don't necessarily want to say took a turn for the worse, but he started out with a fire ass promo, and then it got to be a little not so much as it lingered on. I think it should have been real short, simple, get the point across. But then it, kind of devolved.
So everything in this Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy angle has been absolutely pitch perfect up until last week with Jungle Boy coming out. And everything has taken a turn. You can't have a better setup for an angle than what Christian Cage gave you for 3 weeks, talking about cutting some of these promos. I mean, one of our episode titles was called Savage Ash Christian. Like, that's for a reason. Like, the dude was coming for blood. And then what happens last week? We talked about it. Jungle Boy's music hits. He just waltzes down the aisle. He gets the opportunity to do this promo, to get everything off his chest. He starts off strong. This is what I was hoping for. Like, if Jungle Boy is going to be a main event player, we needed to see it last night.
He
I don't know if I'm convinced by it.
I mean, he sounded real convincing for that first.
For 15 seconds.
Yeah, 15, 30 seconds.
And then, so he looks in the camera, grabs the microphone, starts screaming, yelling. I'm like, okay, if this is what he's going to do for a minute, then I'm like, yeah, this is what you need to see. Like, this is what, again, going back to what Ricky did with his time in the mic. Ricky's got veins popping out of his neck. Like, he's intense. He's believing it. Everything he says, you believe it as a fan. And Jungle Boy starts out that way, and then what does he do? He starts placating to the fans. Then we devolve into dick jokes, which is just like, we can't. This is a blood feud. Like, Christian took you out of commission for weeks, which in kayfabe means he took money out of your pocket, right? Because if the winner of these matches gets a bigger purse, yada, 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 that's how wrestling's always been, right? Not only that, he then insulted your father. You've then seen him insulting all these other people on the roster. And you're going to talk about the size of his dick? Like,
and his ex-wife.
And like, the ex-wife stuff I'm cool with if it's delivered in the same tone as what he did the first initial part of the promo. But like, I don't know. You might feel differently. Listeners might feel differently. The heat from this angle has just petered out, pun intended, here. And I thought that when Jungle Boy came back, this was going to be one of the most compelling things on television, and it just hasn't been.
Yeah, I mean, they can swing it around, and I figure they will. But it did get a little childish towards the end of it last night. I figure we'll see another segment next week. I don't know if they'll do it every week leading up to All Out, because that's still a month away, a little over a month away.
Like this angle would have been so different, and this would have hit differently if last week, instead of Jungle Boy's music hitting, Christian and Luchasaurus, they beat the shit out of RC Blondes. They start rolling out the ring. You hear a commotion in the fans. Oh, what the fuck's going on? Jungle Boy just jumps the rail and goes straight for Christian. Starts beating the shit out of him. Like, you have to get. There are just better ways to do this than what we're doing it, I guess, and ways that wrestling has done it in the past. I think one of the things, and we're going back to this Vince McMahon influence. So many people have their perception of what wrestling storytelling has been shaped by Vince McMahon, and for better or for worse, if you want to argue that, I guess. But like, you go back and watch some like 1970s NWA, some 1980s stuff. You can do a run-in where that was 88, I think it is, when Stan Hansen comes into Georgia Championship Wrestling NWA, and he's going after Luger. And he just fucking hits the ring and hits Luger with like the stiffest looking back elbow shot I've seen, and just beats the dog piss out of him the whole time. And like, you have security trying to break him up, and he's beating the shit out of them. Like, that's the kind of stuff that now, particularly with WWE under new management, I made this comparison before we started rolling. If WWE is corporate pop and their stadium rock and their mainstream country, If you're AEW, your focus should be on being punk rock, on being jazz, on being outlaw country. You have to be so different in your presentation to try to get fans over to your side, or to make new fans, or to bring back old wrestling fans that like that old school wrestling style. And so there's a way to do this Jungle Boy stuff. I'm afraid it's AEW is getting to be WWE light, because this is what Vince and those guys would have done with this Jungle Boy angle, which is what we've gotten. Like, I don't know. I don't want it to be too negative, but it's.
I think they'll turn it around.
I mean, I hope so, but like, if that's what Jungle Boy's promo skills are going to be, now granted, he's only 24, 25. He has time to improve. But, I mean, when you're putting him up against guys like Ricky Starks or guys like MJF or even somebody like Darby that has a very unique presentation, I don't know if Jungle Boy is there yet. And obviously the name change needs to happen pretty soon.
Sooner rather than
if we're going to try to get this kid over, because I think he has main event level talent. And so if we're going to do that, we need to do everything in our power to make him seem like a main event level talent. And I don't know if we're doing that right now, despite Christian Cage's best efforts, who's doing some of the best heel work of his career, and really some of the best heel work in a long-ass time.
Yeah, it's nice to see that angle on the show.
Now, obviously, the Luchasaurus thing's probably going to happen. He's probably still going to turn on him. You know, we talked about that, but like...
There were a couple times last night where I thought it was fixing to happen.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's what Christian was probably putting out there. But, yeah, the Jungle Boy stuff, you hope that he turns it around. And I say this every week, man, but the biggest thing a babyface can have is a fire about them. They need a mentality to where when they're slighted or when they're wronged, they come out swinging, or else it's hard to get people to get on your side, because people don't like rooting for somebody that's going to get walked over or it doesn't respond with just a fucking angry motivation to whoop somebody's ass.
Yeah. Well, we're getting a little tight on time, so let's do a twofer real quick. We got Swerve versus Tony Nese and Smart Mark, and then Thunder Rosa versus Miyu Yamashita. I mean, I'm sure I botched that name, but I'm fairly certain that's how they pronounced her name last night. You know, the Swerve thing ended how I thought it would end. I have no idea who the guy was that jumped Keith Lee backstage. Not sure what that angle was. I don't know if I've missed something along the way. You told me earlier you weren't real sure who that was.
I have no idea who that guy was.
So that was weird. And then I thought the Thunder Rosa match was really good. A lot of good spots in there. And nothing that, I mean, did nothing to advance the story. I don't think we'll see this lady again, but it was a really good match. But I'm still not sure what's happening there with the women's division. But it was good. It was nice to see a solid match from Thunder.
Yeah, this was kind of the same kind of match they had on Dark. They even did a little callback with the small package, reversing it, because that's how Yamashita beat Rosa on Dark. But yeah, this was a good match. But again, like, it's the same complaint we had a couple weeks ago. Like, the title's just kind of doing nothing, which is, if you should have any kind of angles for anything, it should be for your two main titles you have on the show. Like, you should have at least something for them. But so who knows what's going to happen with that? The Swerve Keith Lee thing, like, I don't know. Does anybody care? I mean, is this the best way we're using these two guys?
No.
I mean, I don't even know. We don't even know who this one Josh Woods guy is. And I mean, how far are we out from All Out? 5 weeks?
Yeah.
6 weeks? Like, 6 weeks is enough time to start building to some kind of angle. And you would have to think that we're not going to do Tony Nese and Josh Woods versus Keith Lee and Swerve at All Out. If we are, then we're in a pickle. That's some trouble.
Yeah, because a lot of folks could be competing for that title. I mean, obviously.
Yeah. FTR.
Yeah, FTR. So I think we've probably spent enough there. There wasn't much happening there. Let's move on to the main event for last night. Was the return of Bryan Danielson. and then he faced off against Daniel Garcia. Didn't end the way I really figured it would end, but it's probably how it should have ended. You can't put Danielson out there and let him win every match. That's not why you bring him in. You bring him in there to whoop the hell out of some people, sure, but he's got to be putting people over at some point. And I thought it was a good first match back, and it was a nice way to wrap up the show. I thought it was a really solid match. What are you thinking on that one?
Daniel Garcia is a fucking stud, man.
Yeah.
Bell to bell. To be able to hang with a guy like Danielson, who are there, you could probably count on one hand guys that have been better or more influential in terms of the bell-to-bell action and the art of professional wrestling than what he has. I mean, it might just be Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, and then it might be Bryan Danielson. So to have a guy like Garcia, who I think is only 24, 25, get in there with one of the greatest of all time and hold his own in a convincing manner, I mean, that's what this is about. Like, you should be using these guys to elevate people. Danielson is... Or Garcia is somebody that Danielson has called out explicitly. When they were forming Blackpool Combat Club, he mentioned Yuta and Garcia by name when he was in that promo with Moxley when they were talking about joining up. So I think it's a good call to not have Garcia in Blackpool Combat Club, because the one thing that he's been missing from his game is a level of charisma and a mic work and some more character, and I think he's been able to showcase that when he's been with JAS. But yeah, man, I mean, this was a hell of a match, and just to see Bryan Danielson work, man, it really is a thing of art. Because when you're talking about what is so appealing about Danielson is that in wrestling, the whole point of it should be it needs to look real. It needs to look like these guys are actually trying to hurt each other to win a match. And some of those elbows that Danielson was landing, I mean, he's a fucking pit bull out there. And Garcia was giving it right back to him, man. And that's just what I love to see. Like, everything I love about pro wrestling was right there in that match. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, it might have been a little bit surprising, but I think that's the best call to have, is to have, Hager and the heels cheat to get the win, and then having Danielson saying, like, I'm not going to tap out. Like, I'll just pass out. And so that's a hell of a way to put Garcia over. Let's hope they capitalize this going forward, because I think you got something with Garcia.
Yeah, it was a nice way to end the show. I thought it would probably be sooner. I'm not sure why. I guess I just assumed that Moxley would be the main event. But they played up the concussion angle with Danielson. We knew he was coming off of that, and I thought they did a pretty nice job with it. It might have been a little overdone at one point. One of the moves where Danielson came off the top rope and didn't really have anything to do with his head, and then all of a sudden he's down on the thing, and they're like, "Oh, did he get injured?" And I'm like, "Well, it wasn't really anything."
Well, that's a callback. He's got a concussion that way before, so that's a callback to some WWE type stuff where his that shotgun drop kick he does off the top.
Okay.
That has given him concussions in the past.
Really?
Yeah, and so he's doing a little callback. I mean, when you just talk about the artistry that this guy has, I mean, keep in mind, like, this is a dude who was Ring of Honor World Champion, who, I think he talked about this in his book. He said that when he was champion, these Ring of Honor things, they would all go to, like, 60-minute draws and stuff like that. And so he was like, the fans really wasn't getting up for the match until 30, 40 minutes in. And so this guy's just like, fuck it, we're going to end it in 30 seconds. And so a main event level match with a world championship at stake, he goes out there, and I don't remember if he went over or if the other guy went over, but yeah, they just ended in 30 seconds. And he was like, yeah, the crowd was shocked. So, like, he's the type of guy that thinks about this kind of stuff, that really is, and I think that's one of the reasons why he came to AEW, is that to challenge himself artistically. Not only is wrestling a physical sport, but it's an art form as well. And so being able to flex those kind of creative muscles, I think, was something that's really appealing to him. And now, I'm sure this was his idea to do the play up the concussion angle. And I'm sure they'll keep playing this thing up. And, I mean, that's another little added wrinkle, because now you can't really tell, right?
Yeah.
Is he working it? Is it actually happening? Like, because the fear of all these fans is he's one concussion away from hanging it up for good. So, Yeah, it's just great stuff overall. I mean, Danielson, when he does retire, if we're still doing this podcast, we'll have to do a full career retrospective. We mentioned our top 5 wrestlers a few podcasts ago, but I was strictly talking about top 5 in terms of like totality of their careers, drawing money, that kind of stuff. When you're talking about in-ring, bell-to-bell action, there's not many that's better than that guy.
Yeah, maybe they'll have the Ring of Honor archive somewhere by then, and I'll be able to watch a lot of it.
Danielson versus Morishima. If you can find that match, Danielson gets his fucking retina dislocated because Morishima hits him with such a stiff fucking elbow.
God damn.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, man, I can't wait till Ring of Honor, that video library gets up. There's so much stuff we'll have to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I think let's wrap it up. And by wrap it up, I mean let's talk about what's done up real good for the week. I'll lead it off because I know for sure what I enjoyed this week. While I was at the house with COVID, I spent a lot of time just kind of staring into the void. It's one of those things when you're sick, you think like, oh, I'm going to watch all this stuff that I need to get caught up on, and I'm going to do this, that, and the other, and while I'm just kind of sitting here doing nothing. And I just kind of watched some of the same shit I'd seen over and over again for several days, and then finally at one point when I started feeling a little better, I started watching The Bear, because I'd seen a few people talk about it. It's only 8 episodes. They're 30 minutes or less, except for the last one, which is about 45 minutes. But that is one of the best fucking TV shows I've seen in a long time. I don't watch a ton of TV anymore, but I mean, it comes in hot, and it basically stays that way for 8 episodes. And it's fucking brilliant. The writing, the direction, the music. There's a lot of great music from the 90s in there. There's fucking Pearl Jam. There's some great Wilco in there. There's Radiohead. Just a lot. Counting Crows, Have You Seen Me Lately? And not a lot of the songs you would kind of expect to hear. Like Pearl Jam, Animal is in there. Wilco, Handshake Drugs is in there, which is not a 90s song. But just fucking excellent. I mean, top to bottom, music, direction, acting. The acting is fantastic. The writing is great. If they don't win some fucking Emmys for episode 7, something is tragically wrong with what people are watching and how they're viewing and rating things. It's one shot, and I didn't realize that until I was about midway through. And it's not one shot for the sake of fucking artistic fucking, I'm going to see if I can do this bullshit, right? Because some people do that.
Yeah. It's masturbatory.
It fucking works, though, like in this episode. And how, I'm sure there were some seam cuts here and there along the way, but you get halfway into it and you're like, oh, this is one fucking shot. And the way I don't know, it's fucking excellent. That's what I'm going to say. Fucking go watch The Bear. If you're at home on fucking Saturday or Sunday with nothing to do, you can knock it all out in one day, get in, get out, and you'll thank me later. What you got?
So I think this might be my first music recommendation for the Done Up Real Good, but I came across a band called Beach Bunny. Have you heard of these guys?
Mm-mm.
Well, I should say girls.
You did say Harry Styles one week.
I did say Harry Styles. Fuck, my bad. Apologies to Harry Styles. Still the greatest going today. Beach Bunny, they're a 4-piece kind of indie pop out of Chicago. They're led by a girl named Lily Trefolio, I think's her name. They're kind of just a throwback to like a 90s sort of sun-soaked pop, jangly guitars. The drummer's really tight in the pocket, and like her songwriting, it's like teenage angsty kind of stuff, young person stuff. But it's good. Like the lyrics are really good, and so it's something that I don't think I would have necessarily gravitated towards, but it came across one of the playlists on Apple Music because they just put out a new album called Emotional Creature. And I was like, "Fuck, this is good." And I've been literally been listening to them nonstop for 2 days now. And it probably won't be everybody's cup of tea. It probably wouldn't be your cup of tea. But yeah, I would say if you're out there and looking for some kind of new kind of music, give them a try. I think we need more women in rock and roll. We need more women playing guitars, for sure. So, they're kind of in that Paramore vein, sort of like that. That's my recommendation. Beach Bunny, the new album's called Emotional Creature. They got big on TikTok, apparently, but I'm not on TikTok, so I didn't know that.
Gotcha.
So I was just like, oh, these guys are really good. Where they come from? And they're like, oh, fucking everybody under the age of 25 has heard of these people because
they're on TikTok.
Yeah, they got millions and millions of streams on TikTok.
Yeah,
so.
That's a weird thing for me. As a 45-year-old, I get on TikTok, and I got on there to watch like fucking like puppy videos. I was like, puppy, it's gonna be my happy place. This is where I go because nobody's fucking arguing about politics and shit like that on fucking TikTok. I'm just gonna watch puppies and like puppies running around and being happy because that makes me happy. But it slowly evolved into like I watch fucking guitar restoration videos and guitar tutorials and fucking just kind of basic some of the popular shit that pops up, like comedy shit that comes through. But there is one band that I started paying attention to. And I say paying attention to. I follow them on TikTok. I haven't listened to any of their music, but there's a band called Dury that kind of popped off on TikTok. Kind of catchy, garagey, kind of brother and sister. I think it started out just two of them. They've got a couple people that are touring with them. Just real catchy, kind of throwback 90s-ish, kind of what you were talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of digging them, which is weird. It's like, I don't know. This is how people find music now. I'm fucking old and in the way. I don't know how shit works.
Well, the fucking Chinese government is stealing your information from TikTok because fucking Joe Biden's a libtard and the country's going to hell and fucking all that shit that's now popped off. So congratulations, you're all communists now.
Well, I think let's go ahead and wrap it up for the week.
Just somebody clip that and put that on. We're all communists now. Congratulations.
Roll Tide. Let's wrap it up. Let's be sure, if you don't already, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Alabama Slam Pod. Shout out Chase Gilmer. He's always
what up, Chase?
Tweeting at us about the episodes. We appreciate that. And it would be real helpful if when we release the new episodes, just share them, retweet them, quote tweet, whatever. Share with your friends. Let them know what we're doing. You can follow our main conglomerate site, collective of folks doing a bunch of stuff with other podcasts and essays at the Alabama Take.
Also, shout out to the last essay that was written about Harold and Kumar. Did you read? You happen to read that?
I haven't read it yet. I think that was Jeremy Satcher.
Yeah. We on some big brain shit at the Alabama Take, so get over there.
Yeah, roll tide to Jeremy.
Roll tide.
Patrick's got one he's been marinating on.
Fucking. If you've ever wanted a 10,000 word defense of why Adam Sandler is one of the best actors of all time, it's coming down the pike at some point.
Yeah, so stay tuned.
I've been working on this fucking thing for a month, and I'm sick of it.
Follow the Alabama Take on Facebook. They're also obviously on Instagram and Twitter as well. That's where basically any podcast or essay that comes through, we're a part of the Alabama Take Network. That all gets shared on Facebook. We don't have our own personal Facebook for the show, but just please share us with your friends. You can find us obviously on any podcast app. Please review us on the Apple Podcast. That would be helpful. And buy a t-shirt. Go to tpublic.com and you can search Alabama Slam and or Alabama Take. Should get you to the Alabama Take store where all our stuff is shared. We got Alabama Slam shirts. We got shirts from Taking It Down, the other podcast. It's a pop culture podcast that Blaine Duncan runs. It's fucking excellent. I'm listening to it today on my way to work, and then I'll be listening to it on my way home. They're going in depth on the Bear this week, and new season of This Song Sucks comes out soon as well as maybe a couple other things that are coming down the pipe there. So. Just fucking share us with your friends, man. We're trying to grow this thing and, see what can happen, see if something can pop off.
We're committing to SummerSlam, right? We're going to do SummerSlam?
I'm going to watch SummerSlam.
Okay. So we'll have a SummerSlam.
I didn't drink any bourbon
Hopefully
last week
good.
while I was medicating with this fucking Paxlovid thing during COVID because I was afraid what might happen with the bourbon and medication. So I'm going in on some bourbon Saturday night and watching SummerSlam. So we'll touch on SummerSlam next week. Also, shout out and get well soon to the homie Corey Ryan Forrester. He tweeted a little while ago. He was supposed to be on the fucking roast of Ric Flair this weekend, but he got COVID and he can't go. And I know he's fucking real sore about that, but he'll make a quick recovery. And
prayers for Flair. Let's hope he doesn't die.
Yeah, no shit, man. I'm sure we'll touch on that. I don't think I'm spending that much on that match this weekend, but we'll definitely. I'm sure we'll see some highlights, and we'll touch on that next week. So yeah, to tune in next week. We'll talk about the Flair match and SummerSlam, and obviously we'll hit on Dynamite, man. And we'll see y'all, or y'all can hear from us again next Friday. We appreciate it.
Later, guys.